welcome back to Rowing with the Homies. I'm Finlos, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. First, of course, no apologies really needed, but I feel some kind of way about having gone so long without both recording a new episode for this show, and honestly what that means is I'm not rowing as much as I need to be. We walk every day, which is excellent for maintaining, good mental health, good physical fitness. But I had really come to look for this combination of rowing and recording these episodes as part of my regular mental and physical health regimen. And I think it's okay to take a break every now and then, especially as I was doing, if it's to reconsider, to think about my motivations for why I'm doing a thing. What is it that I'm looking to get out of it? And to make sure that it's really doing for me what I want it to. And so, I think after thinking, talking, considering, and just really leaning into why I'm here, I definitely find value in this. And hopefully I'll be able to reintegrate the rowing and the recording back into more of a regular schedule. But I think that conversation about being honest with myself about what my hopes are, what my goals are for this practice, really dovetails really nicely into the conversation that we're going to have today. But I just wanted to remind you that this podcast has always been about movement, and not just the physical kind, but also the kind that happens when our minds and our spirits and our will, they all meet that resistance, and we still keep working through it. So thank you for joining me today. I hope that you are in a good place, that you're able to get some movement in. But to move into my thoughts, I've been really thinking about hypocrisy. And I know that's a heavy word just to dive right into. It's something that we often use as a very strong accusation. We often hear it in the language of politics or corporations, maybe even preachers and religious people, maybe influencers on social media. But how often do we sit and think about what that might look like in ourselves? And it's true, hypocrisy is everywhere. It's in our politics, it's in our workplaces, in our relationships. And if we're honest, when we look in the mirror, we'll probably find it somewhere in ourselves too. And it's that gap between the story that we tell about who we are and the choices that show who we actually are. So, I want to talk about that gap. I want to talk about how hypocrisy shows up in both the macro scale of power, but also the quiet corners of our daily life. And ultimately how hypocrisy corrodes trust. Trust in others, trust in institutions, and trust in ourselves. And then maybe what it might take to live in alignment once again. because we can't rebuild trust without truth. And so hypocrisy is what's been on my mind. And if you follow politics, and to be honest, it's really hard not to if you're even minimally engaged in what's going on. But it feels like hypocrisy has become normal. And it probably always has. But I think the maybe obviousness, maybe the comfort with which people are duplicitous has become something of a shock. And the easy target, of course, Donald Trump. He said again and again that if reelected, he would not politicize the Department of Justice. He said he'll restore fairness, that no one is above the law. And then sometimes in the same interview, he'll outline exactly how he plans to use the DOJ to go after political rivals. Whether that's former FBI Director Comey, whether that's New York Attorney General Letitia James, whether that's soon-to-be new target Adam Schiff in the Senate. And it's not subtle. But I guess that's kind of his point, right? His kind of hypocrisy isn't meant to be hidden anymore. It's meant to overwhelm. We're supposed to be just too tired to care anymore, maybe. It's just so common that why are we even asking the questions anymore? And look at Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. He's positioned himself as a man of integrity and transparency. I mean, he says that he's a deeply religious man, conservative man who lives by the Gospels, but he's been quietly keeping certain members of his own party away from the Capitol. Not just certain members, he's been keeping Congress closed strategically so that new members can't be sworn in or key votes can't happen. It's a move that just paralyzes democracy while claiming to protect it. And of course, this is all happening during a government shutdown. And of course, he's blaming the other side for why the government is shut down. And yet he is not allowing any sort of debate to happen. And of course, it is not just a right now problem or a conservative problem. Every administration, every side has contradictions. We've seen presidents of both sides preach unity while using executive orders to bypass debate. We've seen movements demand accountability while refusing to apply it internally. And I think a lot of it is because we live in a culture that values optics over honesty. Politicians know what voters reward is confidence more than consistency, and sound bites tend to play better. It's exhausting, but it's also all too familiar. Because if I'm honest, really, and I think that's always the goal, I can see the same pattern in smaller ways. And myself, and people I care about, and all of us, we curate our image to look consistent. We tell people we're doing fine when we're unraveling. We post about mindfulness, but stay tethered to our phones. We talk about work-life balance while answering Slack messages or Teams messages while in bed at night. And when someone calls us out or calls us in, even gently, how often do we rush to explain why our contradictions don't count? Oh, I'm just busy. It's complicated. I mean well, there's a good reason. So, I mean, I guess we know what it means to live with integrity, but how frequently do we make peace with cutting corners on truth? And we wonder why no one really trusts anything or anyone anymore. Because somewhere inside, you know that if you're not being honest with yourself, why should you trust anyone else? Trust doesn't always collapse in a single moment. Sometimes it dissolves quietly, like rust, a promise delayed, a half-truth, a rule bent just this once, and before you know it, that sense of moral gravity, the thing that orients us, starts to slip. And what's wild, of course, is that we hate hypocrisy when we see it in others. We're relentless about it. We expect apologies and consequences and public reckonings. But when it's our turn, we desperately look for those loopholes. And I guess that double standard, right? That desire to avoid things, it's so hard to escape. And that's why hypocrisy exists, because it doesn't live outside, it's right in here. And it's that space between our intentions and our actual actions. So yeah, I mean, it frustrates me to see hypocrisy in politics, but what I really struggle with is realizing how easily it can sneak in to my own choices if I'm not vigilant, if I'm not thoughtful, if I'm not careful. And that vigilance is something that I've worked really hard to foster, because there have been some dark days, and I know the consequences of deceit. And it brings me to something maybe a little bit deeper. If hypocrisy is such a common, I guess, aspect of being human, what does it really mean to live honestly and transparency? And that gets me thinking about why this happens. Why do we fall into the pattern of hypocrisy even when we hate it? It's said that integrity is being the same person in private as you are in public. It's an easy quote, but in reality, it can be difficult to practice, because for most, it's not really about deception. It's about defense. It's a way of protecting ourselves from discomfort, from the watchful gaze, from being perceived, by pretending that we are in alignment. And that tension when what we believe and what we don't match, we experience that as that cognitive dissonance, that discomfort. And it's really uncomfortable. So instead of facing the contradiction, we tend to rewrite the story. We might say something like, I had no choice, or it's not that big of a deal, or no, that's not how it really happened, or it's different for me because I have some exception. And so we make those exceptions, those excuses for ourselves, and they grow and grow over time. And it doesn't make us evil, because then it's really easy to fall into the trap of self-loathing, and that in and of itself becomes another excuse. But because it's easier to protect the image of goodness than it is to face the moment that we fail, then we just try to cover it up. And if we just scale that up from friendships to partnerships, to leadership, from personal identity to public persona. And it's easy to see how these same mechanisms can evolve into institutional failure. I mean, there's no other word for it. And another way we try to hide our hypocrisy is through something called moral licensing. And this is insidious. It's what happens when we do something that's good, but then use that good thing as an excuse or a pass to do something questionable, something that we really don't want people to see. It's a way of like balancing the scales in our heads. And again, we are not solely defined by one mistake, but patterns do affect how we are perceived by others over time. And that's why accountability has to start internally, because we can't be forced into integrity from the outside. All we can do is model it. We can show that we are living it. And what that means is really getting comfortable with that discomfort. It's posing those questions. Where is that tension? Where am I out of alignment? Where do I say I am a thing, but my actions don't line up? It's noticing that gap between what we say and how we behave. And then instead of excusing it, just staying in the tension and feeling it, because that discomfort is where the growth happens. I think that those questions are necessary. The challenge is necessary because the results, the clarity, the loss of that discomfort by being in truth is worth it. The moment when you have the actual follow through and knowing that you are someone worthy of trust, and then people start to behave as if you are a person worthy of trust, it's worth that work. It's worth moving through the discomfort and understanding that you might lose people. People may not forgive you. That's okay. But it does lead me to the final segment and how today depression feels like being in a hall of mirrors. And if you've ever been in one, at a carnival or a fair or something like that, you know how disorienting it can be. When everywhere you turn, you see versions of yourself almost look right, but then you move, and then the angles change, the reflections bend, and it's you, but it's not you. And the reflections reflect off each other, and suddenly you're surrounded by images that feel familiar. They almost look like doorways with you in them, but none of them are true. And that's what depression can feel like. There's the version of you that smiles at work, the one that says, "I'm fine," the one that shows up on social media posting a caption about gratitude because that's what you're supposed to do. And they all look like you. They all look like me, but they aren't. And when we're already struggling with identity or exhaustion or anxiety, those reflections can become a maze. We lose sense of what's authentic and what's just, a survival instinct. And we've all had the experience, or we've witnessed somebody going through this experience where we're just juggling too much. Work, relationships, exercise, being healthy, making friends, going out, being social. And people are like, you're handling it all so well. And the people just smile and nod. When the reality is they're falling apart inside. And that's the trick of those mirrors. From the outside, everything looks aligned. But on the inside, it's chaos. Depression amplifies that distortion. It makes every reflection just a little bit off. Even when you do tell the truth, even when you say, I'm struggling, our brains can whisper, not enough. Not enough. Not real. Not worthy. And when we start pretending that we're fine just to avoid that voice, hypocrisy sneaks in again. Emotional hypocrisy. And I start lying to myself just to stay functional. And that's the kind of hypocrisy no one talks about. The kind that exists between the inner world and the outside. And it drains us because it takes constant energy to maintain the illusion. But we can work through this. Sometimes the only way out of the hall of mirrors is to tell the truth. Not big, dramatic truths. Just small, simple truths. Saying to a friend, I'm not doing great today. Being honest with yourself and saying, I can't fix everything. And every time we do that, the mirrors can start to lose their power. And that's what accountability feels like on the inside. Not punishment, not guilt, just clarity. So today, depression feels like being surrounded by mirrors and slowly, deliberately choosing to stop performing in front of them, to stop performing for myself and just be me. As I wrap this up, I keep coming back to this idea. You can't build trust on top of illusion. Every honest act, every decision to speak the truth instead of seeking comfort brings us a little bit closer to alignment, to trust, not towards perfection, just growth. So, if you feel lost in your own reflections right now, you're not alone. Start small. Say one true thing, even if it's just to yourself, and make one small true act in alignment with your values. And don't say anything about it to anyone. And that's how you build integrity. And that's how we rebuild trust. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it on social media. You can subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. You can leave me comments, feedback, or suggestions for future episodes. You can email me, finlos@finloslives.com, or message me on social media. I hope that you've been able to get some movement in today. And I look forward to our next conversation.